No one saw it, no human eye witnessed it, but the entire sky paused. Above Mount Nebo, a spiritual battle unfolded, invisible to men, but palpable to angels. The location, a cursed stretch of land, arid, dead, and yet chosen by God for what would become one of the Bible's most mysterious and terrifying events. Moses was dead. His body lay lifeless, but it was not left to chance. After all, Satan desired possession of that body. But why? No one saw Moses die. He ascended alone to Mount Nebo, gazed upon the promised land from its summit. And there, his time came to an end. There were no witnesses, no funeral, no body found. What happened next defies all natural laws. God himself buried Moses with his own hands, and he chose an unknown place. To this day, no one knows where. This detail, often overlooked, holds one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible. Time passed, but in a nearly forgotten verse from the New Testament, the curtain is drawn back for a brief moment and reveals what human eyes could never see. In the book of Jude, verse 9, the account is direct and terrifying. Michael, the archangel, confronted Satan in a dispute over the body of Moses. It was not symbolic, it was real, a spiritual battle beyond human comprehension. Hell wanted that body. Heaven stood in its way. There on the same mountain where Moses was buried, the invisible world waged war. Not for a nation, not for a kingdom, but for a corpse. This was not just a fight for remains. It was a struggle for legacy, for memory, for dominion. And where there is struggle, there is purpose. It was then that the Archangel Michael was sent by God. No announcement, no trumpet, just the silence of a sacred mission. He did not come to console. He did not come to mourn the death of a servant. He came to war. For on that mountain, Satan was already waiting. And what he carried was not mourning, but hidden, dark, cursed intentions from the very beginning. The spiritual atmosphere over Mount Nebo was suffocating, heavy. The air seemed to resist the divine presence. It was there that Michael, the celestial prince, would confront the father of lies himself, not with visible swords, not with lightning or thunder, but with authority. The dispute was silent, yet its impact was eternal, cosmic. Michael did not take the luxury of speaking with his adversary. There was no debate, only one cutting phrase like fire, "The Lord rebuke you." With those words, the spiritual scene transformed, for this was not just a duel, it was a judgment, a verdict proclaimed before the invisible. Moses' body symbolized something that Satan needed to erase from history. A landmark that, if preserved, would continue to ignite faith for generations. It was more than remains. It was a standard. And in that witness-free confrontation, God's justice spoke louder. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's return to the video. Moses was not an ordinary man. He was the mediator of the Old Covenant, the one who freed an entire nation from Egypt's chains, the one who ascended the mountain and spoke with God face to face. Satan understood the weight of that legacy. He knew that a body holds power. It can become a symbol. It can become a cult. A tomb of Moses, if known, would quickly cease to be just a historical landmark. It would transform into an altar of idolatry. A new religion would be born there, false, distorted, centered on man, not the Creator. The enemy did not want just the body. He wanted the mind of the people. He wanted to manipulate hearts with a subtle, veiled, dangerous idolatry. He planned to use the body as a tool to steal the glory that belongs only to God. He knew that if he could turn Moses into an idol, he would rewrite history, not as a prophet, but as a divinity. And in doing so, he would erase the true purpose of Moses' mission, The image of a faithful servant would be tarnished, distorted, corrupted in the eyes of the people, and even though Moses had died, his influence had not ended. The death of a prophet does not limit the impact of their legacy. Satan sought to strike at that. The memory, the inheritance, the truth Moses carried. But God, who sees the future and knows the paths of human corruption, sealed the body with an eternal purpose. He buried it far from the eyes, far from temptation, far from idolatry. He prevented the symbol from becoming a stumbling block. He preserved the legacy. And once again, he triumphed. Now, do you understand why the body needed to disappear? Because Moses foreshadowed something greater. He was the earthly reflection of what was to come. He prefigured the Messiah, the mediator between God and man. His life was a prototype of Christ's mission, and even his body carried a role in the prophetic narrative. Satan knew this, and that is why he fought so fiercely. He wanted to break the prophetic line, to rupture the sacred representation, to corrupt the symbol, to confuse its meaning. If that body were contaminated, the future message of redemption would be tainted. The purity of the messianic typology would be compromised. But God's plan could not be distorted. The purpose was sealed. Moses would not be forgotten or corrupted. He would be resurrected. And that promise was fulfilled centuries later on the Mount of Transfiguration, when he appeared alive, glorified, alongside Elijah and Christ. Not as a dead man returning from the beyond, but as someone transformed, redeemed, an active part of the eternal plan. His body would never be handed over to the enemy. The dispute on the mountain foreshadowed a divine pattern. What would happen with Christ himself? A fight for authority, for legacy, for truth. Moses and Elijah, together on that mountain, represented the law and the prophets, together before the Son of God, pointing to the fulfillment of the promise, the past, present, and future united in a single vision. And there, Michael's victory on Mount Nebo revealed its true value. He did not just protect a body, he preserved the integrity of the entire eternal plan. Because God knew, as he always has, what the human heart is capable of. The people of Israel, still in the desert, had transformed a simple bronze serpent into an object of veneration. Years later, it had to be destroyed by a righteous king because it had become an idol. If a metal serpent could receive worship, what would happen with Moses' tomb? Without a doubt, it would be elevated to the center of a pagan religion disguised as devotion. Satan understands the weakness of men like few others. He knows that all it takes is a symbol, a location, an image. He would make that tomb a point of pilgrimage, of worship, of cult. Generations would bow not before the God of Moses, but before the corrupted memory of the man. Idolatry always presents itself as a sacred remembrance, an innocent gesture, a tribute. But it is precisely here that the deviation begins. Faith slowly shifts from the Creator to the creature. The focus moves from God to the symbol. And even though Moses was a faithful servant obedient to the end, he was not to receive glory after death, because the glory of God is indivisible, untransferable. He does not share it, not even with the most exalted saints of history. Idolatry is the most subtle poison the enemy applies. It disguises error with a varnish of faith, and that is why it is so effective. That is why God acted preemptively. He hid the body, he sealed the tomb, he removed any possibility of deviation, because when faith is diverted, ruin is certain. And it was in this setting that Michael appeared, not with brutal strength, but with divine authority. He did not come to demonstrate physical power, but to execute a higher command. Before Satan, Michael did not shout, did not argue, did not debate. He simply declared, "The Lord rebuke you." Those words were not casual. It was not a simple appeal or a catchphrase. It was a spiritual sentence, heavy with celestial legality. There, on Mount Nebo, an eternal truth was reaffirmed. Authority does not lie in the loudest voice, but in submission to the highest throne. Satan was stopped, not by force, but by spiritual limits he could not surpass. Because the whole of heaven recognizes those limits. There are decrees that even hell cannot break. The order was clear, direct, non-negotiable. Moses' body is untouchable. The archangel Michael was there to protect something far deeper than flesh and bone. He was guarding a divine purpose sealed from ancient times, a mission that needed to be preserved intact. When God decrees, no force in creation can oppose it. Not even the adversary, with all his cunning, can alter a destiny set by the Creator. Michael's presence in that silent confrontation is proof that obedience is more powerful than reacting. That declaring divine judgment is more effective than trying to win with words. Michael's authority did not come from himself, but from his complete submission to God's will, and in that act of obedience he crushed the enemy's intent. Perhaps the greatest lesson here is this: true power is not in confrontation with violence, but in standing firm in God's order. How many times have we failed, not due to weakness, but because we didn't recognize true authority? The definitive answer to this confrontation came centuries later, on the summit of another mountain. No longer Mount Nebo, but the Mount of Transfiguration. And there, before the astonished eyes of the disciples, Moses appeared alive, not as an ethereal spirit, but with a glorified body. He stood alongside Elijah, not as a symbolic figure, but as a living witness to the fulfillment of promises. His presence at that moment was confirmation of everything God had sealed in the past. Moses had been resurrected, transformed, preserved. The dispute over his body had not been in vain. It was part of something greater. There they were, Moses and Elijah, representatives of the law and the prophets, pointing to the one who would fulfill them all, Christ. Peter, moved by the scene, wanted to build tents for the three of them, as if they were all on the same level, but God interrupted. A voice from heaven cut through the confusion. "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." The Father did not allow attention to be divided. The scene was powerful, but the focus was singular. There it became clear where the true center of faith lay. It was not Moses. It was not Elijah. It was Jesus. Satan had completely failed. The body he wanted to corrupt was transformed. The symbol he tried to use for idolatry was elevated to glorify the Son of God. The dispute, which seemed hidden and silent, was part of the redemptive plan from the beginning. God won, not only by preserving a body, but by using that very body to reveal glory. The body that had been contested now pointed to Christ, greater than Moses, greater than the law, greater than the prophets. Every attempt by hell to mislead faith was annulled by the manifestation of true glory. Can you now see the depth of that invisible battle? Because the battle for Moses' body was not the end, but only the beginning. The enemy continues, tireless, fighting for remains. Not necessarily for bodies, but for symbols, for memories, for anything that can spiritually distract. He contends for hearts with distorted recollections, with twisted faith, with misplaced reverence. Nothing escapes his attempt at corruption. Memories, monuments, traditions. If something can become an idol, he will fight for it. The battleground is no longer just Mount Nebo. It is the inner heart of man. Minds and hearts are his new targets, and many do not perceive it. But Michael is still at war. The same archangel who rebuked the devil over Moses' body continues to protect God's chosen ones with divine authority. He operates in the unseen, obeying the command of the Most High. Moses' hidden burial is not just a historical detail. It is an eternal warning. Even the heroes of faith must not occupy the place of God. Admiration must never surpass worship. Reverence must never compete with surrender to the Creator. All glory belongs exclusively to the Lord, who never shares his majesty with anyone. He is invincible, eternal, absolute. Every spiritual battle has far greater implications than the natural eye can capture. What is at stake is rarely just the visible. It is never about flesh alone, but about purpose, about destiny, about eternity. Moses' body was merely the external symbol. The true target was the message it carried. The battle continues, and the victory, in the end, does not lie in who shouts the loudest, but in who recognizes who has the final word, the ultimate authority, the eternal judgment. The one who spoke from heaven on the Mount of Transfiguration still speaks today, and the only response that preserves, protects, and sets free is obeying his voice. If you enjoyed this content and wish to continue exploring hidden mysteries and biblical stories, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This helps us bring more videos like this and reach more people who are interested in the Bible. Activate notifications so you don't miss upcoming content, and share this video with friends who might enjoy it. We'll see you in the next one.